Today's episode of the More You Know podcast features Nick Santonastasso. He is a keynote speaker, bodybuilder, and fitness model who is a medical miracle, being one of only 4 alive with Hanharts disease. Enjoy the episode. How did your parents' encouragement in your youth impact you, and why is encouraging other people important?
So as parents, they're cultivating their kids' mindsets through their actions, their words, the way they react to situations, the way they communicate with one another, the way they communicate on the phone. And so the way that my parents raised me from an early age was they sat me down and said, you're born with no legs, one arm, and things aren't going to change. And, the world's not going to stop for you or adapt to you. You got to figure out how to do things on your own. And so, it's as parents, there's a question we can all self-reflect on is, are you doing too much for your kids? Or like that helicopter syndrome of being a parent, telling your kids that they're the best and they're amazing. And when in reality, they have to work for that title, right? You have to work to be the best. People they're not just the best, right? And so when they get into a sport or they get in the business and they're not the best, they're like, well, mommy and daddy told me I was the best. Like, why is this not real, right? And so it's instilling false belief. But the way that my parents raised me was they put my clothes in front of me and they said, tinker with it, figure it out. We'll give you verbal suggestions and help here and there, but most likely it's got to be you to do it. And so the biggest advantage they gave me was help me exercise the muscle of problem and solution. They didn't give me the solution every time. They had my mind work for it. They had me think of different ways that I can accomplish these things. It might take longer. It might look a different way than normal kids, right? But at least my brain was starting to stimulate solutions at an early age. That was the same thing for feeding myself. Put me in my high chair and said, Nick, here, here's a spoon, here's some Cheerios, figure it out. And so the biggest advantage my parents gave me was they treated me normal, and they always encouraged me to get back up, and that things might take a little bit longer, Nick, and you might not do it the traditional way, but there's always a way. And so I think it's important to encourage people because sometimes it takes a different person from a different walk of life to really break through the barrier that we have around our minds, if we're listening to something with a closed mind. Also, it might take an outside person to put spotlight on something that you may think is a challenge when it's your greatest gift. You just don't see it because it's your life, right? And then thirdly, the most important thing about encouraging other people is you're contributing. And if you want to live a fulfilled life, you need to be doing 2 things. You need to be growing and you need to be contributing. And so what better way to contribute than encourage people along the way?
Could you please share a daily activity or chore that most people don't think much of that's much more of a challenge for you?
Just getting around. And I don't say that in like a negative way. I'm just saying that, I don't use my wheelchair unless I'm in like public or in crowded places. At the gym, I'm walking around. And so with me walking around, I'm all my weight is on my left arm. I catapult myself and I walk around and I go up and down the stairs, and we have a 2-story house. And, that's just, it gets tolling, or it gets pretty, like right now, like if you could see it, like my hands cut up from like walking around and stuff. And that's just a simple day to day that, people may not think about, just walking, for example, is like fitness for me, so it really helped me to get in shape because it helped my quality of life. It wasn't just to look good. It was like, I want to be able to move myself around when I'm 30, 40, 50 years old, because I have to move a little bit differently. And so that also got my mindset into just thinking about what's most efficient, and asking for help more, like not having an ego and not want to ask for help. Like, ask for help. It's not weak. Sometimes I'll ask, plug my phone. Can you plug my phone in? Because it's quicker that way, right? Or can you open it? I can open this water bottle, but it's quicker if you open the water bottle for me, right? So it's like not letting that ego get involved. And so, and even in longevity, it's one of my core values is longevity. And so with my body, if I don't have to walk, if I can get carried or if I can get pushed in a wheelchair, like I'll use it because it doesn't hurt my ego anymore. I don't think I need to be Mr. Independent. It's just like, this is better for me long term.
Did you initially get into working out because you weren't as mobile in the past?
Initially, I wanted to just be in better shape. I didn't think about the longevity aspect as a kid. But now I'm super grateful that it's in my life, right? Because like it's all about longevity. But majority of my life, I was an out of shape kid. So yeah, I mean, going up and down stairs, I'd be winded, and run into my room as a chubby kid that played video games all day, like I would be winded. And so, yeah, just better quality of life in itself is just like keeping myself in a top shape, because we owe it to ourselves too. It's crazy how we forget that we only get one body, bro. We only get one body, and whether you like it or not, or you have legs or an arm or you have full body, like it's a temple, and you got to respect it, you know. And a lot of people trash their body. You know, I love food, and we put some shitty things into ourselves. Excuse my language, but um, if people just really focus on the importance of like, or the thought of like, I have one body and like this is my temple, and like I will operate much more efficiently in my business and in my personal life if I'm putting the right fuels, if I'm putting the right, like water. Like people don't even drink water. I'm like, you gotta drink water. Like this is the basics, you know. So um I'm also really passionate about putting a spotlight on health and fitness, because it's not just the physical gain, it's the mental gain too.
Do you think your creativity was enhanced by your increased need for adaptation due to the Hanhart's disease?
I do. I think um not even just for me, right, hand heart, but I think in general, challenges force you to be creative. You know, challenges and trials and problems force you to be adaptive, right? Because we all have to adapt in some sort of way. It's not just people with limb differences, right? Like we all have to adapt in our day-to-day life, in our personal life, and in our business life. I just think that it adapting was introduced to me more, uh, adaptation was introduced to me earlier in my life, and maybe at a more aggressive way, because it was like that was it. You know, it was like all adaptations, right? Like everything was adapting, like how I get on a chair, how I put my clothes on, how I brush my teeth. Like everything was just like forced me to be creative. But we all have that creative power inside of us, and how we unleash that is just exercising the muscle of like stepping into uncomfortable situations. You know, approaching challenges as problems, viewing them as more of like gifts and opportunities rather than the negative aspects of challenges and problems, right? And it's also a power of language. You know, our language is power. And so, for example, you know, the majority of humans and entrepreneurs, we always start off with the word can't, which is not only disempowering, but it doesn't allow our brain to stimulate solutions. We're already blocking off the power. And so, you know, I always talk about the how, but what's even more powerful than the how is actually the why. And so if you have a great enough why, if you have something that pulls you, like you don't really need to know how to do it. You'll find a way, right? If the why is powerful enough, the how will show itself, right? And so like some of my whys was to be independent, or some of my whys was to be that skateboarder, or some of my whys was to be that wrestler. And so that was the thing that pulled me to figure out the how, or the how it kind of just, you just fall into it, because that why is just so nothing's going to stop me, because this why is so powerful, right? So I think for anyone, yeah, hand-heart syndrome may have introduced adapting and challenges and problem and solution earlier and more aggressive, but we all have that power. We just got to tap into it.
What is your best piece of advice for adapting and overcoming in life?
So adapting and overcoming, like I said, you can start with the how, but I mean, really the why. Like ask yourself, you know, we kind of get caught up in the motions of life and we forget why we're working or why we get out of bed. So really get clear and concise on your why. Clarity is power. So if you really have a clear vision of why you're doing something, then you're more compelled to figure out the how, you're right? Or to figure out how to overcome that, because you know on the other side of that challenge is so much sweeter than the BS you're going to go through. And so I think the way to start is step into uncomfortable situations more. You know, step into things that you're not prepared for, um, because it's like exercising a muscle. You know, I just had a coaching call, and this girl, she had, you know, fear of public speaking, which is one of the biggest fears. And then she started doing Facebook lives, and then next thing you know, she's 5 lives in, 10 lives in, now she's comfortable on Facebook live, and now she's moving it to, you know, in-person talks, right? And it's because we exercise the muscle. But you'll never be able to adapt and overcome, or problem and solution, if you don't put yourselves in problems, or don't seek out the problems in your business or in your personal life, right? And so I would say just, you know, create an anchor when when you feel nervous, when you feel scared, or not prepared about something. Step into that moment or commit to it, because you're going to find out that you're going to learn all the things you need to learn to step into that moment, right? So you don't fail, because we don't want to fail. And it holds you accountable. And also the most important thing it does is it builds self-confidence. You know, a big gap is people struggle with confidence, and how you gain confidence is you commit to things and you follow through, you know, so you don't diminish the way that you view yourself. You don't diminish your work ethic, yourself, your word, which is the most important thing as humans, is what we have is our own word, right? It's very powerful. And so if you commit to things and follow through, you'll gain confidence, you'll gain pep in your step because you know who you are and you're stepping into that new identity. And so what I would say is start committing to things, or when things are uncomfortable, be like, I got to do it now. Like, I got to do it because it's uncomfortable and I know it's going to grow me. Right. And that will start exercising the muscle of, pivoting, adapting and overcoming. And most importantly, seeking the uncomfortable moments because, there's massive growth in them.
Why is a bad mindset the biggest disability somebody can have?
So yeah, that's a quote. I like the way you put it. The quote I tell people is, over the 23 years of my life, I realized it's not the physical body that holds us back, but the biggest disability you can have is a bad mindset. And what I mean by that is, I'm gonna get a little weird here, but I look at the world as the Matrix. Like, I look at it as a game, man. And the thing is, the majority of people don't realize that they're in control of the reality, that they're literally able to shape the reality through their intent. Having intent is very powerful. Your thoughts, your words, people don't realize the power in words when you speak them. Like, I always catch people, like the last coaching call, she's like, what book are you reading? And I was like, I'm reading a book on investments, and I know nothing about investments. That's why I'm learning about it. And she's like, yeah, I'm like stock dumb. I was like, you aren't stock dumb. I was like, you're stock learning. I was like, because there's a big difference. And every time that you speak that, every time you say I'm stock dumb, you reinforce that belief and you give it power. That's like little shit. People don't think that's a big deal, but language is a massive deal. The way we talk to ourselves, the way we talk to other people literally scopes interactions, our conversations, the way we feel about ourselves. Like, language is super powerful. And so these are the little techniques that are in your mind, right? Catching your language, being self-aware of the words you use, being self-aware of you speaking your affirmations, your incantations, stepping into a new identity. Like, for me, one of the incantations that I added was, I am a tactical speaker. It was one of my limiting beliefs of, like, I'm not tactical enough. I need to get more tactical. I need to have more content. And so now in my incantations, I start off, I am a tactical speaker. And then it's followed up, I'm a force for good. I'm a student of the game. I'm kind. Abundance flows through me. I'm decisive. I'm evolving as a leader. I'm becoming the man I'm meant to be. Now, at first, those beliefs may not register, right? Because you're not fully that person. But when you continuously do that with repetition and you embody it with your state, you embody it with your physiology, with emotion, you start sculpting your identity. You start sculpting your DNA, the person that you're becoming, right? And so that's what I mean about the biggest disabilities of bad mindset is my programming. Like, people can see me on the street and say, oh, he's disabled. But when we compare mindsets, now I'm the one who's able. Like, my programming is far more superior because I practice it. I've realized the power of the mind. I've realized that it's not the physical body, but it's the way that I view the world. It's the way that I think about situations. It's the way that I treat people with compassion. Like, these are all little mindset tricks. And I think just people are looking for mechanics. 20% of business is mechanics. Everybody can tell you the mechanics and the way to build a business, but 80% of business is psychology. It's the way that you operate. It's the way your clients operate. It's the way you view your customers. It's the way the customer experience. It's like, it's so much more than mechanics, bro. It's like our programming. And also, getting into the matrix and the world is like, we are primed every single day through our phones, through the news, through the media, through everything. We're primed. There's so much negativity on the news. You turn on the TV, it's negative. You turn on Instagram, now you're primed to compare and say, oh, well, I'm not successful because that guy's got the boat and that guy's got the house. And what am I doing, right? It's the comparison epidemic is real. And so all around us, we are primed. And then that's why even waking up and being very self-aware of the content you're ingesting, the people you're talking to, the people you're interacting to, the emails you're looking at trigger you, and then you treat a coworker a certain way because you got pissed off at an email that primed you 30 minutes before, right? Like, people aren't aware of that. And so I'm trying to spread light on the fact that psychology is the most important thing. And that goes down to your programming, who you let into your life, what you let into your life, what you're listening to, what you're watching, and who you're hanging around with.
What advice do you have for handling social anxiety, fear of judgment, stage fright, and other fears surrounding what other people think?
So the big thing about that is, perfect example on that coaching call prior, fear of public speaking. If you're going on stage or you're going to talk to people and you're focused on what my hair looks like, or what are they going to think of me, or what if I mess up my words, then you're focused on the wrong thing. You're focused on yourself. And suffering only happens when one is only focused on themselves. And so when you're in your head, you're dead as well. When you're in your heart, you're smart. I tell people when you go on stage or you're networking or you're connecting with people, if you're speaking from your heart and you're authentic and genuine, you can't lose, because people's bullshit meters are very good nowadays and they know when you're BSing. And so when you're that authentic, genuine person and you're speaking from the heart, you always win, because there's not many people like that. And that's what the world needs. And so for social anxiety, for lack of self-esteem, or feeling they're not good enough, you're focused on the wrong thing. You know, like it's got to go from me to we. It's got to always be we. Like when you show up in a conversation, how can you just show up for them the best you can? How can you be present? How can you just lock eyes and really listen to everything they're saying and not be distracted by your phone and looking out what's the window? People will feel that and you'll be connected with them. You don't even have to say anything to connect with people nowadays. They just want presence. People just want to feel heard. They want to feel cared for, and they want to be treated like people. And so my advice for people would be, you got to exercise the muscle. If it's uncomfortable, do it. Do it until it's until it's comfortable, until it's second nature, until you enjoy it. And to get a little harsher, the name of the game is relationships. In business and personal, it's all about relationships. And so if you can't network, if you can't talk to people, then you got to exercise that muscle, because you are going to be getting passed up in business and your personal life. And that's coming from a brother to a sister standpoint, right? And so exercise the muscle. If it's uncomfortable, create that anchor and step into that moment, and be present with people. You know, in the moment when all our attention's on phones and the screens and the newspaper, whatever it may be, you will stand out when you lock eyes with someone, eye contact, when you exercise eye contact, when you exercise being present, when you exercise the ability to listen and not open your mouth. That's the key. And if it's uncomfortable, do it until it's comfortable.
I'm just trying to make it all make sense.
The More You Know podcast.